A plain-spoken Midwesterner, Ron Johnson, senator from Wisconsin, joins me now. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
I'm doing great, Hugh. Hope you are too.
I am. Tell us about your reaction to President Biden's the red setting speech last night.
Well, it wasn't exactly unifying and healing, was it?
No.
Just the setting is frightening. It's just dark. I was on the platform and President Biden gave his inaugural address. He took his oath of office, I think 8 times during that speech. He said his number one goal was unify and heal this nation. And now he's done everything but that. Both Obama and Biden as a candidate said they're going to fundamentally transform this nation. Hugh, I often ask, do you even like, much less love something you want to fundamentally transform? And of course, now we're seeing what that fundamental transformation looks like. It's open borders. It's 40-year high inflation. It's record gas prices, rising crime, the indoctrination of our children. Here we are in America in the year 2022. We don't have enough baby formula to feed our infants. So they're fundamentally destroying this country. And now he gives speeches like that, designed, literally designed to divide this nation, exacerbate the huge gap when this nation needs healing. As President Lincoln said, that a house divided cannot stand. This division weakens us. It emboldens our enemies. The Biden administration, Democrat governance has been a disaster for this country.
So, Senator Johnson, my comment was that the red setting speech was a disaster for him politically. It was clearly a political speech that was designed to divert attention from his record and try and make the election about Donald Trump. So I want to talk about his record with you. But first, you're running against Mandela Barnes. Now, John Fetterman is the single most radical person on the ballot for the Senate this year. But I think the silver medal goes to Mandela Barnes. This guy is out there.
Oh, he definitely is, and I don't know. I might have to challenge you on that one.
Yeah.
He has been behind every last one of these radical policies, and of course, he supports all of the disastrous policies that have given us, these disastrous results. So, no, he's a radical leftist. He's the guy that founded, for example, the Wisconsin chapter, the Worker Families Party, which is a pretty radical left group. He's for defund the police. He actually wrote the bill in the Wisconsin Assembly to let criminals out without bail. And he's doubled down on it. This is even after the Waukesha Christmas Parade massacre. That murderer was out on low bail. So, no, he's a radical leftist. I think you'd give Fetterman a real run for his money.
That would be interesting to get an objective assessment, but I have not got the time because neither of them should be near the United States Senate. Let me run down the 6 issues. Inflation, affordability, the cost of heating this winter, crime, borders, education, and the student loan debacle. Did you notice, by the way, Senator, President Biden did not mention the student loan debacle in his speech last night? Last Thursday, it was the greatest thing he'd ever done. A week later, he won't even mention it.
Well, they have to be getting the kind of reaction I'm getting. People are really outraged by it. Folks that have worked hard all their lives, never went to college, and all of a sudden that debt burden is going to be transferred onto their backs. People who did go to college, took out loans, sacrificed, scrimped, and saved, and paid those student loans off. They just feel like chumps now. So there's an awful lot of outrage, and this just further proves that the Democrat Party has become the party of the elite. I hope a lot of Democrats, moderate Democrats, start waking up to the fact that their party, this is no longer the party of JFK, who, quite honestly, would have been one of the more conservative senators in the Republican conference, were he alive today.
Senator, my guess is that they panicked at the White House and at the DNC after the student loan debacle became clearly a political loser, and they threw a Hail Mary last night, and it was a flutter. And Penn State beat Purdue.
That could be, but it's just exactly who these people are. What they want to do is they want to buy votes. They want to make more Americans dependent on government. They want to grow government and its control over our lives. I don't understand it, but I do understand how disastrous it is. We're $30.8 trillion in debt. We are mortgaging our children's future. That debt burden puts all of the high priority programs like Social Security, like Medicare, like veterans benefits, like defense of this nation. That's what puts those programs at risk. And unfortunately, Democrats and too many Americans are just whistling past the graveyard in terms of the debt that we are adding to the backs of our children.
Not one word about the Afghanistan collapse a year and a day after we skittered out of Afghanistan and that country descended into darkness. I'm not surprised, Senator Johnson, but did he owe it to? I had a Gold Star father call this morning, talking about how this is the commander in chief and he's worried.
Now, that'd be what I always call the embarrassing and dangerous surrender in Afghanistan. What do you think emboldened Putin? In addition to all these other actions, all the other policies that have been so disastrous for America and have weakened it, uh, that type of surrender in Afghanistan further weakened America in the eyes of our adversaries and emboldened them. I do not believe that Vladimir Putin would have invaded Ukraine, committed his atrocities and war crimes if Donald Trump were still in office. But with Biden, he's got a track record. As Bob Gates said, that he's been wrong in every foreign policy in the last 40 years, last 4 decades, and that string of being wrong is unbroken.
Oh yeah, he's added a couple of more years to it since then. Okay, Senator Johnson, when I bring up the student loan giveaway, I'm told, but you guys voted for PPP. I did like PPP. I thought PPP was necessary. How do you defend the deficits under President Trump and when the Republicans were control against the spending under President Biden, both the reconciliation, not the infrastructure bill, that was bipartisan, not the CHIPS Act, that was bipartisan, but the latest reconciliation and what is between 300 billion and $1 trillion in student loan forgiveness?
Well, first of all, the pandemic was once in a lifetime type of event, and we were certainly in danger of having just economic collapse. Now, I argued against the shutdowns. I think it's been proven that they did not work. We shouldn't have done it. They were very unwise. They certainly shouldn't have been extended as far. But we had to do something fast. We had to do something massive to signal the markets that we weren't going to allow a collapse. We weren't going to allow a financial contagion. Now, I voted for the first CARES Act. I kind of held my nose because we started debating that at $750 billion, but within a few days, really, that ballooned to $2.2 trillion. And I stopped voting for the COVID relief bills because every time we'd have a new one, there's about $1 trillion left unspent. So,
Yes.
my point to people is, when you ask for bipartisan action, be a little careful because it is true. We're very good at doing a bipartisan basis in Washington, D.C. as mortgaging our kids' future. But distinctly different. We were shutting down businesses. The government was shutting them down. And we needed to reimburse them for that type of shutdown. I would have done it a different way. I would have targeted the relief differently and better, as opposed to just shotgunning it around the economy. So again, I'm not a real supporter of everything we did during COVID. Certainly in terms of the trillions we spent, I think we way overspent. But it's completely different than what we're doing here with the student loan program, which is again just transferring the debt burden from one group of people who entered into those debt arrangements voluntarily and putting on the shoulders of people that had no hand and certainly didn't benefit from that debt whatsoever.
So, Senator, about Mandela Barnes, did he have a position on the lockdowns? Did he have a position on the violence of 2020? The summer of 2020, one of the most violent in the United States since 1968 to 70. Both the lockdowns and the violence. What was his position? How's it contrast with yours?
Well, we had some violence right here in Wisconsin, Kenosha. And after the first day, certainly he and our governor basically incited more violence. Mandela Barnes called that police action, which was justified. The police officer has been clear. This is an individual who's going to basically kidnap his, children. He had a knife in his hands. He called that a vendetta, a police vendetta against a black man, basically. So he just further incited the violence. I'm sure he did not speak out about the more than 570 riots, that sprang out of about 8,000 protests. I'm sure he'd been right there with Kamala Harris pushing the bail funds. Remember, he wrote the bill in Wisconsin that would have let violent criminals out of jail without bail. So, I have, in terms of shutdowns, our Governor Evers was all about more government control, but fortunately the Republican legislature took him to court and ended his emergency power. So, Wisconsin recovered quite well because we weren't shut down for very many months.
So let's conclude on the border, the southern border. Of course, Wisconsin is a border state, but it's the northern border. It's the southern border, though. That is, it's genuinely existential crisis to a country not to have borders. It's no longer a country if it doesn't have a border. And I don't think we have a border on the southern border.
Listen, with the flood of deadly drugs coming into every city in America, every state is a border state. Now, I just had local sheriffs talking about, they used to have to try and shut down meth labs. Not anymore, because the meth is just flowing so freely and it's cheaper and in larger quantities out of Mexico. The fentanyl that is murdering, that is killing and poisoning our young people. I know the border is a disaster. It's galling that we get Secretary Mayorkas in front of our committees. He won't admit it's a crisis. He won't even admit it's a problem. He tells me, no, Senator, it's a challenge. No, it's a crisis. I had Mark Morgan, former head of CBP under both Obama and Trump, and Brandon Judd, the head of the Border Patrol Union, up for an event. And together we've pretty well figured about 3 million people have been let into this country, either been encountered, we don't even call it apprehension anymore, been encountered, processed, and dispersed, or as known and unknown gotaways in just the number of months that Biden's been in office. And to put that number in perspective, Hugh, 3 million people, that's a number larger than the population of 17 states. And you're not calling that a crisis, combined with the deadly drugs, and then just the human depredations of the human traffickers, the sex trafficking. It's horrible. These are some of the most evil people on the planet. I calculate about $18 billion based on a briefing is what we are putting into the pockets of some of the most evil people on the planet. That's the business model the Biden administration is facilitating. It is a crisis. It's harming everybody.
Last question, Senator Johnson. You've known Joe Biden for a long time. He presided over the Senate when you've been a senator for 12 years. I don't believe he has dementia or a medical condition, but I do think he's infirm. I think he's 80 years old. Is he different from the Biden you first met?
Yeah, he's way more feeble. Joe Biden, when I met him, was a friendly individual, gregarious. In my former life in the private sector, he'd be everybody's sales manager. He's not the same guy, and I mean the angry speech, the anger that bubbles out of him during these events. I think he's a changed personality, and I do not think he's really running this country. I think he's got a bunch of radical leftists that are part of his administration. I mean, the people he's nominating to these positions, for example, we have an eco-terrorist that spiked trees. I mean, that is a deadly type of activity. That's a felony. The Democrats confirmed her to be the head of the Bureau of Land Management. So, I mean, that's just one example out of many of the radical leftists he's surrounding himself with, and that's what's happening. They are fundamentally destroying this country with their fundamental transformation of it.
And Mandela Barnes wants to do more. Senator Ron Johnson, keep coming back. Good luck in the campaign ahead, and great to talk to you again.
Ron Johnson for Senate.com. Have a great day.
Ron Johnson for Senate.com. Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. On September 2nd, 2022, I watched the president's speech this morning. It is mostly forgettable. Indeed, it is forgotten by most of you already who saw it, and most of you didn't see it, watching Penn State Purdue, and I don't blame you. It is indeed forgettable, except for its setting, the red setting, like the red wedding in Game of Thrones, the red setting. That got the most. I looked at Twitter when I got home last night to get quick reaction. And of course, the Beltway Blue Bubble loved it, and the Never Trumpers loved it, and everyone else either ignored it or they were watching Purdue Penn. It was a transparent attempt to turn the election season away from President Biden's record towards a fear of monsters under the bed. It reminded me of 1938 and Orson Welles' story of doing the American Theater, Mercury Theater broadcast about an alien invasion. It actually scared some people who weren't too bright. And so everyone in the country saw January 6th, and everybody in the country knows that the Republicans and the Democrats are divided, but there is no clear and present danger. There is no clear danger. There is no present danger of what the president was talking about last night. You know, the idea that white supremacists are running around running the country and that MAGA Republicans are dominating Republicans. MAGA Republicans like Mitt Romney, about whom then Vice President Joe Biden said in 2012 he wants to put you all back in chains. The idea that Republicans are docile and cowed and on the edge of violence, it's just so absurd, it's ludicrous. And the idea that election deniers are going to deny elections, that's absurd and ludicrous. The biggest reveal in the speech last night was that The president made no mention, zero, of the student loan debacle. No mention of inflation, recession, crime, the border, the terrible toll of the education shutdown, the situation in Ukraine, the terrible collapse in Afghanistan. It was just 24 minutes of how bad Donald Trump is. The Soul of America speech was solely about vote, 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 left wing. Vote, 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 left wing. Vote, 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 left wing. It was a get out the vote speech. Cut number 6. Not loaded yet? Cut number 6.
Vote, vote, vote.
There you go. That's what the speech was. Vote, vote, vote. His premise, cut number 1.
We must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans.
Okay, he wants his cake and he wants to have it too. And the deal here is, how many do you think, Mr. President? I asked Secretary Clinton when she came on the show, how many white supremacists are there in America? And she said 600,000, and I kind of go along with that. 10% of America is 3.3 million people, and so 1% of America is what's half of 3.3? 1.7 million Americans, 1.65 million Americans. And so 1/2 of 1% of it's a small number. They get a lot of attention. They're bad people. They've lost their way, and they have their reflection on the far left. But the idea that violence is everywhere on people's minds, it's just silly. There's no mention of inflation. Let's talk about his quick review of his record. Cut number 3.
Look, I know the last few years have been tough.
That's it. Tough. Inflation, 13% year over year for your groceries. Recession, costing opportunity, destroying Europe. Crime, can't go downtown. A lot of different places. Commodores player shot in Washington, D.C. Commanders player, I meant. The border is just wide open. Again, I go back to the terrible toll on education. It just is not persuasive. Let's give him his due. This is the heart of his speech, cut number 4.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. Now, I want to be very clear up front. Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans. But there's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. These are hard things. But I'm an American president, not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America. And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA
We
forces
don't
are
want Stacey
determined
Abrams to win in
to
Georgia.
take this country backwards.
I mean, she is the poster child for
Backwards
election denier.
to an
She still says
America
she beat Brian Kemp 4
where there
years
is
ago.
no
She's running
right to
against him again. She's
choose,
going to get beat a second
no
time. She's going
right
to
to
claim again. But you
privacy,
remember the people
no right to
who objected to
contraception, no
elections
right to
originally were
marry who you
Democrats in
love.
2000, Democrats in
They
2004,
promote
Democrats in
authoritarian leaders, and
2016.
they fan the flames
Republicans are
of
going to do
political
the same thing
violence
when the mob broke into the
that are a
Capitol.
threat
800 people, they're
to
all
our
being
personal
prosecuted. That's
rights,
good. They should all go
to the
away
pursuit
for
of
the appropriate
justice,
terms. That's being
to the
decided.
rule of
That's good.
law.
But no mention of the violence of the summer of 2020. It's just an absurd speech. It's ridiculous, actually. The president is ridiculous, and the president, his summary of American history, cut number 8.
We, the people, have burning inside of each of us the flame of liberty that was lit here at Independence Hall. A flame that lit our way through abolition, the Civil War, suffrage, the Great Depression, world wars, civil rights. That sacred flame still burns.
So nothing's happened since 1964. I just cannot believe that listing. First of all, abolition happens after the Civil War begins. So just as a matter of technical expertise, the speechwriters are terrible. But you can't summon up the great unifying moment after 9/11, George Bush. You can't talk about anything except things that happened before 1964. It's such a fail of the speechwriters. And I don't blame him. He's an old man. As someone said, Republicans have been trying to depict him as a doddering old man. Not trying. It's an old man speech in front of the craziest lighting I have ever seen. That may be the worst stage presidential address I have ever seen, with 2 Marines in the dark in front of the red columns. Now, if you take the wider panned out shot, it's red and blue, but they didn't do that. The shot on TV, and then some of the networks, I guess CNN and MSNBC carried it. One of them had it wrong, green. They had the colors, the pool camera was wrong. So one back in the studio, they were desperately trying to make them look better. Look, it was a debacle. Brett Baer gave us a little bit of commentary, but this will grow. But he won't be talking about this next week. Cut number 9.
Well, a couple of things. One is for the White House press secretary to say that this speech was not going to be political is pretty remarkable. This speech essentially was a convention speech in front of Independence Hall. I think I, too, was struck by the image of the dark red lighting with the 2 Marines standing at attention in the background. A lot of times when we analyze things, we do things through the prism of how the media would cover it if Donald Trump gave this speech. I think they might not stop talking about it for weeks on end. Because the messaging was so aggressive, it really was also a blueprint for Democratic candidates. This is how we're going to run. This is what you should be talking about. And while he hit tones of optimism about what he thinks about America, he clearly was trying to divide and drive a wedge in the Republican Party. I think they believe, the political advisors to the president, that the more that they're talking about Donald Trump, the more that the country is talking about Donald Trump, the better positioned they are to not be talking about.
That's exactly right. Your phone calls, 1-800-520-1234. Joined now by Blake Masters, the next senator from Arizona. Good morning, Blake. Welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning, Hugh. Great to be with you.
How goes the campaign?
It's going, Hugh. We survived August. Here we are heading into September. I think the Democrats thought they could just end it in August, and I think they're surprised. We're gaining ground. We're just down 3.5. That's within the margin of error. So I like where we are.
I like where you are because of who you are and what the issue set is. Let's start with the border. There is no state more adversely impacted by the border collapse as Arizona. What does Mark Kelly say about that?
Well, he makes some of the noises, Hugh. He'll say, I'm concerned about the border crisis. We need to finish this wall. But it's hot air because he just says this because he's nearing an election. If you look at his record, he spent the last 2 years propping up, supporting, doing everything he can to implement Joe Biden's open borders policies. Mark Kelly's done more than anyone in the whole state, actually probably more than anyone in the whole country, to help Biden create this border crisis. So he can pretend now to be tough on the border, but Arizonans are seeing through it. He caused this border crisis. Joe Biden caused this border crisis, and families in Arizona are suffering for it.
Blake Masters, what about the student loan debacle? The president doesn't bring it up. Democrats run away from it. What has Mark Kelly said about the bailout of the wealthy in this United States?
Mark Kelly supported that bailout. Mark Kelly supports taxing hardworking Americans, hardworking American families to pay for degree holders' debt. It makes no sense. What Mark Kelly said specifically in a little statement that his team, probably spent 36 hours focus grouping, he said, look, college is too expensive and the federal government shouldn't be profiting off young people. And it's like, this is what the Democrats do. They find these little safe things to say to support the craziest policies. Yeah, college is too expensive. Maybe send colleges the bill for the debt that their kids can't pay off, but you don't tax hardworking people to subsidize an elite group who has college degrees.
Blake, I'm talking to you from Mid-Coast, Maine. I was out on the water last night, and people up here are very worried about fuel oil in the winter. In fact, the energy crisis would have hit Arizona this summer with the cost of gasoline, the cost of energy. Does that matter as much in a warm state like Arizona as it does in a very cold state like Maine?
It matters a whole lot here. Families in Arizona, they're still finding that they're paying more than double for a tank of gas, more than double in just 2 short years. And again, Biden chose this. It would be bad enough, Hugh, if they were trying. Maybe they were trying to do the right thing, and then markets are tough or something like that. No, Biden threw away our energy independence. We were energy independent at the tail end of the Trump administration. It was great. Gas was $2. We were net exporters of energy. And one of the first things Biden does, he cancels the Keystone Pipeline, right, which Mark Kelly supported. Biden forbade oil and gas interests from drilling, from actually using our natural resources. This administration basically declared war on fossil fuels. And Mark Kelly could have put a stop to it as the 50th vote in the U.S. Senate, and instead he didn't. He stood idly by, and energy costs are skyrocketing. Energy, of course, is the master input into everything, and so when energy goes up, all prices go up. Mark Kelly caused this inflation, and it's just that simple.
Blake, when Republicans are doing well, Democrats want to do process stories. So we got the McConnell versus Peter Thiel story yesterday or 2 days ago. What is the situation on resources and the Blake Masters campaign in Arizona? Are you well resourced?
We're going to have all the resources we need to spread our message and win. Mark Kelly might outspend us. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, yeah, Mark Kelly, the Democrats, the whole machine, they're going to spend more money here in Arizona. But it's not the guy who spends the most money who wins. We need enough money to get the message out. The message is, hey, if you want a senator to go to D.C. and help Biden implement his agenda, well, you got one. That's Mark Kelly. If you want to send a senator to D.C. who's going to be a check on Joe Biden, who's going to show bold and independent leadership, who's going to work for Arizonan families, well, that's me. And we're fundraising. I'm working hard. We're going to have the resources we need.
What's the website?
Very simple. Just go to blakemasters.com.
All right. So very last question. Whenever Democrats are behind, they want to turn the question set to Trump and abortion and process questions. Whenever they're on the issues, they're talking about inflation, recession, the student loan debacle, the latest extraordinary spending bill, our weakness overseas, the Afghanistan collapse. Local media in Phoenix, with the exception of my station and one in Tucson, is very left-wing. Is anyone covering the actual issue set in Arizona?
We're not going to leave it to the mainstream media to cover the issue set. I have to play offense and put Mark Kelly and the Democrats on the ropes. They tried to attack me for my pro-life views. I don't apologize for my pro-life views. And I went on offense. And I pointed out the Democrats, they're the extreme ones on this issue. Mark Kelly literally voted for unlimited abortion nationwide up until the moment of birth. And I played offense. I put some heat on him. Now he just came out and admitted. He said, oh, well, there have to be some limits on abortion. So it's like, really, Senator? That's not how you're voting. So tell us about those limits, right? If they're going to try to make us play defense, nope, we're going to turn that ball right around and put them on the ropes.
I missed that. I didn't see Mark Kelly retreat. That abortion on demand up till birth policy of the Democrats is such a loser with voters.
Only about 10% of voters like it. 90% of people know that's just wrong. It's ghastly. It's murder. And so if they try to call us the extremists on this, nope, you hold your ground, you play offense, and you get back to talking about all their failures, their failure at the border, their failure with inflation, all this woke ideology in our schools. We put them on the ropes, we win.
BlakeMasters.com. Thank you, Blake. Keep coming back.